So Gen Z for Change is a coalition of over 500 TikTok creators with a combined following of about 432 million people. Our cumulative reach with all the creators in the network in 1 month is about 1.5 billion views. That's more than CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News combined.
Welcome, Aidan. To everybody who's new here, Aidan Kohn-Murphy used to be the podcast host, and I took over for him. Very big shoes to fill.
You're doing a great job.
He is the executive director. Thank you. He's the executive director of Gen Z for Change, which has over 1 million followers on TikTok. And he is a very funny political activist.
Thank you.
And you should follow him at Aidan, please stop talking, right?
That's correct. That's the phrase I've heard most in my life.
All right, so I guess we'll jump right in. You're someone who knows about Gen Z engagement on social media. With the recent crises in Afghanistan, do you think that social media can be a good platform to promote, charities and organizations, to promote change within Afghanistan, or are we entering something closer to content pollution?
I think it's a mix of the two, because there is so much misinformation and disinformation going around on social media, and it seems like half the time when there's one thing that's everyone's posting on Instagram, like one fundraiser, or like repost this and we'll plant a tree or something. Like it seems like half the time when that exists, like 3 days later, there's a new infographic saying this was not true, this was a scam. And it certainly puts people on edge, because it is hard, especially with international relations, to tell when something is truthful and when something's not, because so much of the media coverage of Afghanistan has been really not good in itself. Right. So I think that absolutely there are ways in which social media can be very effective. I think it is also more effective in the long run, because people are learning about Afghanistan and what got us there in the first place, and how it fits into to America's foreign policy over the last 50 years. And I think that is especially valuable.
Yeah. There's blame to go around with everyone. Do you have specific criticisms of the Biden administration so far? And how are you going to talk about it on TikTok? Have you made anything yet?
So I've reposted a few things. I have not made it yet, made one yet, because it is something that requires so much nuance, because leaving Afghanistan was something that progressives and leftists have been advocating for a long time. And I think what's happening now is an important moment for a lot of us, because I think that a lot of leftists, for very good reason, have usually a very anti-interventionist stance. And I think, and while I generally agree with that, I think that this is a moment that people are kind of wrestling with, because there is a desire to say America only does harm in the world and can only cause pain, which at some moments has been true. But I think we're in a position where the way that American foreign policy has worked for the last 50 years has led us to this position. And I think that what Biden has done, I'm not happy with what he's done, but what would I have done differently is challenging. I mean, other than, of course, allocating a lot more resources to resettling Afghans who are being especially targeted by the Taliban. It is hard for me to figure out what should have happened differently. I think that I am in no way I'm not a huge fan of Biden. I criticize him a decent amount. But I think that this represents a problem that has been going on for a very long time, and through many presidents, both Democratic and Republican. So I think that like, and talking about on social media is when everything kind of started last week, we were talking a lot in like the Gen Z for Change like leadership chat about like what to say, because like, should we stay in Afghanistan? No. Like, should we like do what we're doing now? No. Like, what should we have done? What should we have done in the moment is very hard. We've been talking about making a kind of like long-term explainer about how we ended up in this situation. It is hard because when we have 500 creators in the network, we have to be careful about what we say, because like when Israel Palestine was especially tense in June, I think, it was June or July, we got a team of like five creators together, like two Palestinian creators, two Jewish creators who were not themselves Israeli, but were kind of there especially to like to help avoid any dog whistles, because like the anti-Semitic dog whistles, because they are so coded into everyday language. And we kind of had this team like on Zoom for like probably in total about like 10 hours, like writing like a 4-part script about the history of, I guess we don't call it a conflict, the history of the situation, and how we ended up where we are and what the solutions are. And that is challenging because nobody's going to agree on anything, because like I believe in a two-state solution. Are there problems with a two-state solution? Absolutely. Are there a lot of like progressive, like very progressive and leftist Palestinians who adamantly oppose a two-state solution? Yes. Like, do I believe that like a secular like single state could exist? No. Do I think that that like Israelis, or that some Israelis have claim to the land? Like historically, yes. I mean, of course, not all Jews can trace their lineage back to Israel, but like there are Jews who can. So like, do I think we should move Israel to like Alaska? No. Is that all reasonable? No. Like there are these things where the solution is really the least bad thing that there's still so much criticism for. So like, and while I'm so proud of Gen Z for Change and leadership, like at the end of the day, we're all still kids or young adults. Like I think our oldest member, at least of leadership, is like 23. So like we can handle a lot of nuance, and I'm really proud of what we've been able to do in general. But like talking about like making a definitive statement on Israel Palestine, like with a bunch of like young adults, is really challenging.
It is really challenging. And one thing that I haven't seen enough in the media is, I think, covering what happened in the late 1980s when the Soviet Union fell and the United States funded the Mujahideen, which later, split off into becoming extremist groups and paramilitary groups. And I don't think there's enough nuance in the media at large to really understand how the Taliban came about in the mid-90s and our role in destabilizing Afghanistan. Like, was it worth it for us to topple the Soviet Union and fund the Mujahideen? And we need conversations like this, because young people don't understand the history of Afghanistan at all. And even I find myself questioning a lot of our foreign policy from the 80s about.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very like naive and American thing for me to say, but yesterday I was with my dad and we were listening to a podcast about America's like Cold Wartime policies with Iran and the Philippines, and I truly wanted to vomit. Like there is like so much, like there was one thing about how the CIA in the Philippines was spreading in addition to all the terrible political stuff, was like spreading a rumor that like this like legendary like vampire type creature was out and finding it wasn't, I think it was finding communists and finding enemies of like America and like sucking their blood. And I'm sure I'm getting this right slightly wrong, but they killed like a Filipino man, and the CIA literally drained the blood out of him and like left him to be found so that people would say, oh my God, the vampire's here. One sec, let me turn on my AC.
Okay, yeah. What podcast was this?
This was on the podcast that my father is absolutely obsessed with, called it's called QAnon Anonymous, but this episode was not about QAnon. I mean, I assume it pivoted to QAnon, but
I've met someone that wanted to join the CIA. He's in my class at AU. Red flag right there. No, thank you. I'm terrified. They're fascists.
Dude, yeah, and it kind of occurred to me, and I'm sure this is slightly naive, but also not. Like, do we need a CIA? Like,
think about all the intelligence agencies.
We have defense. We have the department. What's Avril Haines, the head of DNI, the Department of
the Office of National Intelligence, the Defense.
We have the State Department.
Agency,
we have the Defense Department.
Yeah, there's over like 20 intelligence agencies in the federal government, and then there's more within, like, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that now.
Yeah.
We have too much surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably, am I being spied on right now?
Probably.
I'm kidding. Let's shift to the coronavirus. Let's shift to the Delta variant because someone had it here. Aidan Kohn-Murphy had it. Do you have any idea of who gave it to you?
I don't. So what I will say is
I have a theory, Aidan. I think the Westfield Mall contaminated something. I think they gave it to you. I think they wanted you.
That is absolutely a possibility. So I am not fully sure how I got it. I'm over it now. I am fully vaccinated. I will let that be known. We're in a lot of vaccine related campaigns, so it'd be kind of embarrassing if I were not vaccinated. So I will say that I was not doing anything like clearly irresponsible from my perspective. I think that there was a time that we were still kind of in when I got it, which was about 2 weeks ago,
okay,
or maybe a little more than that. Like 2.5 weeks ago, where it was like Delta's kind of spreading, but like we've largely beaten COVID, like we're all vaccinated. And I was coasting off that. I believe that I got it on a train up to a suburb of New York. I was, of course, masked. So I'm not totally sure how I got it. I will say two things. One, my symptoms were very, very mild. I had there were a couple days where I kind of lost my sense of taste. But then I got it back pretty quickly, and I had like fevers and headaches and tired. But I feel like that describes me normally without the fever part, but with the headaches and tired. But what I really learned is that like vaccines seriously work. Is that like in the time when I was my most contagious, which is like the 3 days after you were infected, largely before you start feeling symptoms, I was was a very strange circumstance. It was involved an iPhone, an argument with Apple, and a whole thing. Where I was like, for those days, I was staying with my grandfather, my dad, my brother, my uncle, and then I had to go to get my phone fixed, and I stayed with a friend and his parents, and then I had to stay in Boston again to get my phone fixed. Long story. I was everywhere with my grandmother, my grandfather, and none of them got COVID. They have all been PCR tested.
See, that's why I think it's the Westfield Mall. I think they wanted you to.
It could be. But they also, I was in close contact with them before I realized I had COVID. When I was my most contagious, they're all vaccinated. They didn't get it. They've been PCR tested. They are like absolutely fine, which is really, really amazing. Because if they had not been vaccinated, and I had not been vaccinated, I truly have no idea how many people would have gotten it.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that, because you still need to get vaccinated. It's important they work. If you weren't vaccinated, you would have been, a lot more symptomatic, and it would have been more painful for you.
And I would have infected a lot of my family members.
Yeah, and yes, you would have spread it. Yep.
Because there's this is half of what I complain about anyway. But like, there's no room for nuance on like social media or really much in the media, because it's like, you got COVID and you're vaccinated. Vaccines don't work. When you're explaining you're losing, yes, but we have to figure out a way around that, because it is important for people to know, like, even if you get vaccinated, your symptoms aren't going to be bad. You're not going to be able to spread it as easily, etc.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about like strategies to get that last 30 to 40% of people in America vaccinated, because incentives aren't working, messaging strategies aren't working. How the hell do we get these people vaccinated? Like, I don't know.
I don't think anyone knows. I think that what we're seeing, which is good, which, thank you, media, for doing something irresponsible. Like, Delta fear, a lot of it is very valid, but like there was a period of time where the media was putting out headlines that were like, that implied that the vaccines were less effective than they were, and we're putting out misleading headlines, like the NBC headline, like over 300,000 vaccinated people have gotten COVID-19. Yeah, out of how many? Out of 150 million, but they weren't printing that part until like the actual article. But everyone just reads the headlines. But fear of Delta, some valid, some not responsibly put out by the media, has led to like a clear increase in vaccine rates. I think that I hope that the FDA officially authorizing Pfizer, like not just as an emergency, will be helpful.
Can you debunk some of the conspiracy theories about the vaccine right now?
Absolutely.
Well, we should. As far as I know, I don't think I have a microchip in me.
I don't have a microchip. I think Bill Gates has some more valuable things to do, like increasing his carbon footprint, or working on his divorce settlement. Bill Gates is in his sad boy era. He's not gonna be. If he was gonna put microchips in us, he's put that project on hold.
And like, what would he use it for? Like, what does he?
I guess tracking us, but like he can already do that. Let's be honest.
Yeah, he can already do that. And also, they're not magnetic at all, because
they're not magnetic. That would be cool, but like they're actively not It's so funny, because it's like, I mean, it's funny in a scary way. It's like this game of telephone where like someone's like, I'm not going to do a Southern accent because that seems like it has issues behind it. But the people that I'm thinking of is a literal person who I saw. Actually, I'll do a Southern accent. This is not classist. She was rich, I believe. I think she was a nurse. But like a well-paid. Anyway, point is, I'm not going to do the accent. She was like the vaccine. Like I keep hearing about like these kids who like they get the vaccine and then like all this like metal like sticks to them. I'm like show me, like just.
I know.
Can you
wish
show
that would happen to
anything?
me. That would be fun.
I know. Like, and also if you're gonna say it's happening, just like at least just like Photoshop some pictures. Like it's not that hard. Like these conspiracy theories are just like I heard this, and it's like, just put some time into this. Just get a graphic designer. It takes like 10 minutes to learn Photoshop.
Yeah. No, like, what is the most outrageous conspiracy theory you heard about it? There is, yeah, I don't know. They're all crazy.
I think that I don't know. It's just it's not even like outrageous. It's just people like will make claims and then like know that they don't have any evidence to back it up, but like somehow still feel like they won the argument.
Like, I think for me, I just thought of it that it decreases sperm. It makes men infertile. It makes men like infertile. Like, I don't.
It's also so annoying because it's like oh, no. It's like Trump supporters. It's the mentality of like, Trump did the vaccine. That wasn't Biden. And then it's like, get the vaccine? Me? Never. I'm not putting Biden's microchip in my body. Where it's just like if you're gonna be shitty, just be consistent. Be consistent.
Exactly. Be consistent with it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. At Tucker Carlson.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Vaccinated.
I guess we're getting into like politics now, and I'll ask. This is a big question. What should our midterm plan be? Do you have any strategies for that?
I think that could be South. Like I think in the South, my rule is no more Cal Cunningham types, because there's this whole like series of articles about this where it's like Democrats have thought for so long that like the way to win in the South is by running like a moderate, boring white guy, and like like that consistently doesn't work, like over and over again.
Guy in Alabama, what's his name? Doug Jones. I mean, he won, but keep in mind there's
Against a pedophile.
Right, exactly.
And then he lost, and then he like got I mean, but Doug Jones is his own story, because I think he's actually kind of progressive for Alabama, but like running like Cal Cunningham and pushing out what's her name, Erica Smith, pushing out Erica Smith to make way for Cal Cunningham in North Carolina. Then Cal Cunningham can't keep his zipper up, which is, I guess, a PG expression of this. And like, but then there are all these other candidates like Bill Nelson, which I guess he was a senator, but he was pretty boring and he lost in Florida in 2018.
Oh yeah, he's really boring. Isn't he working at NASA now?
Good for him. Good for him. But more examples come to mind. Well, I mean, it's the same thing kind of around the country too, where it's like running these like more establishment, not that exciting candidates, usually white. And like, there are exceptions to the rule that don't help my case, like Jamie Harrison, Jamie Harrison losing in South Carolina, Andrew Gillum losing in 2018. But like, I think what Georgia taught us is that like, even if it didn't prove the rule, it's saying like, you don't need to be a boring white guy to win in Georgia. And because going like the day before the general election, if you asked me if I thought it was more likely that Biden would win North Carolina or Georgia and like the Senate races would flip Democratic, I would have said North Carolina. And so like, I think in North Carolina, we're just a Stacey Abrams type short of winning. So I think that what the strategy for the midterm is like, and knowing that this is not gonna like work all the time, because nothing can, but not being afraid to run candidates who don't like meet like the traditional like qualifications, in the sense of like, you like to run in this to win in the South, you don't have to be a boring white guy, and you can be like a community organizer and all these things. And like,
well, I think of Malcolm Kenyatta, who's running now for Senate. He's
in
Pennsylvania. He's a queer Black guy, defying the exceptions. I really think he can boost turnout. Who else?
I think even he, like, I mean, Fetterman's still a white guy, but like, he doesn't really meet the mold that much.
Doesn't.
So like, except for his bad stuff, like just running interesting candidates, like, because we ran boring candidates in 2020 and all the boring candidates lost. Like, and also about investing better, because Steve Bullock in Montana lost by 10 points. Like, investing our time better, because
what, did they not spend enough money? Was that the issue?
No. What I'm saying is that like we need to pick races that we actually think we can win, and not because whether it's the polls, whatever the issue is, like, even though I was excited for a potential for Bullock to run, like, if we're gonna have a candidate that ends up losing by 10 points without any major scandal happening, just like the political ebbs and flows happening, we shouldn't be spending our money and time there. Like, we shouldn't have given Jamie Harrison as much money as we did, because I like Jamie Harrison, but if we had spent the money that we spent on him in like Maine or North Carolina or Iowa, like, who knows what would have happened. And we did spend a lot of money there, but just about
that's
like,
true. Yeah.
We
spent a lot of money in Ohio, but I feel like Ohio's a lost cause, in my opinion.
For the presidential election, is it like, also we got to figure out polling. I'm
sorry, people in Ohio, you're not a lost cause.
You're not a lost cause.
I still have hope for you, but like, I want to spend less money on you.
But it's dwindling. Yeah, like I mean, I thought the Biden campaign was pretty well run, because it was like not making the same mistakes as Hillary. It's like going to all these states that could put him over the edge, but like but remembering that if he wins like the Rust Belt, just like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, then he wins. Like, but having all these contingency plans like Georgia and attempted plans like Florida, North Carolina, Ohio,
Texas into, yeah.
Texas, Alaska, kind of. So like I thought all in all it was a pretty well run campaign, which is not your question.
Okay.
So I'm gonna end that question.
And also, well, for messaging strategies too, because I've been thinking about this a lot. Should Biden focus on in the midterms, when he campaigns for, congressional members, should he talk about what he did in the last 2 years more, or it's not an either or, but in messaging you highlight certain elements. He talk about like we will get more progressive policies passed, or should he focus more on what he will pass in these 2 years? Because
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what the next few months look like, because like the infrastructure bill, not the bipartisan one. I think you cut out.
I cut out.
Oh, no, there you are. Oh, you're right now. Like if Biden can pass the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan one, not the bipartisan one, the Democrat-led one, like that would be big. That's like a big bill with a lot of really good stuff in it. And of course, there's a lot that.
And for our listeners, I want to clarify. There's a reconciliation bill that's $3.5 trillion right now. That would include most of our chain spent on care and on child care and infrastructure bill. That will it be passed? It probably will be passed. And that includes like just physical fixes on infrastructure around the country. Anyway, go.
So like if Biden can pass the infrastructure bill, there's a lot to tout there. And there's a lot of good in the American Rescue Plan. Like the child tax credit is pretty huge. So like, yeah, he should focus on some of the stuff he's done. Will it end up being a culture war? Hopefully not. But
I think it will.
Like,
and then,
I mean, I don't know. I think it's really about taking things case by case because we kind of ran a more like nationalized congressional campaign strategy in 2020 and it didn't go great. Like,
but if Republicans run a national strategy, like I honestly feel like the way our media is set up, nothing can really be too incrementalized.
But Democrats run a national strategy and Republicans didn't. And that's Republicans who won in seats that Biden won, which are like a good number, which I don't know the exact number, but I think about like 15 or 20. Like they did not run on Trump necessarily. They ran on I mean, of course, they were RNC pawns who were carefully selected, but they won. They focused on like local stuff and on an extremely local level, which was really hard for Democrats to do because everything was about about kicking Trump out. But it comes at a cost. So I think we just got to focus local. We got to figure out what works in like talk to people in the community, understand what works there. Don't assume that a congressional district in like New York is going to be the same as one like in Georgia, but also like don't assume that they won't be like
right.
Just don't make assumptions. Just go like find community organizers and political organizers in those communities and rely on them heavily.
Yes. And also recently, moderates threatened they basically said to Nancy Pelosi, we want you to vote on this. We want you to present the bipartisan infrastructure bill to the House first before passing the reconciliation bill. What do you think Nancy Pelosi will do? Do you think that she will introduce the reconciliation bill first? Should she, or should we pass the infrastructure bill first?
I mean, I know it is political theater, but like, this is just going to come down to like Manchin and Sinema. There's no one really else to put pressure on. So like, it's hard to know.
Well,
yeah.
But the moderates in the House like can break this too. Like, I'm worried about them not voting for it as well.
I mean, I think we passed. I mean, I don't know. I think in the end, it's not going to make a difference. I think like if it's going to pass, it's going to pass. If it's not going to pass, it's not going to pass. And like, I think, I mean, it really depends on the message that Pelosi wants to send. It's just you want to say like I'm in charge of my caucus, and like you will not in such a like an aggressive way, but like you will do as I say.
I'm the captain now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that passing the infrastructure bill first, the non-reconciliation, that one, it's not the end of the world. Like it is still a bill that is good to have. Like, I mean, not actively bad, and will help actually fix some small infrastructure things. Like,
But then progressives will lose negotiate. Like, progressives will lose the ability to say, "Oh, let's get this done first." You know what I mean? Like, they would lose some power there.
I know, but like, I don't know. It's hard because it doesn't feel like progressives versus for some of these things, it doesn't feel like it's progressives versus moderates. It really just feels like it's like Republicans are always going to be a no, and it's just Democrats versus like Manchin and Sinema. Because yes, like in the House, like Democrats could mess it up, but it's pretty hard to imagine because like the DNC,
Yeah,
it's not
they
too
would
hard.
be punished.
They
Yeah,
would
they
be
would be
punished.
punished. Yeah. They would be punished. I did want to ask you, I kind of want to shift to talking about TikTok and your platform right now.
Mhm.
Can you tell us how Gen Z for Change came about, and how did your TikTok account become so large?
So first, so Gen Z for Change it started as TikTok for Biden. Oh,
I'm
okay.
back.
So Gen Z for Change started as TikTok for Biden, and so in late September of last year, which it's almost been a year, which is crazy. I kind of had this. I was working on Senator Markey's reelection campaign over the summer, and I did a lot of digital relational organizing because I'm from DC and I have a lot of family in Massachusetts. But one of the pillars of the campaign was relational organizing, talking to your friends, and getting them to come to phone banks, getting them to commit to voting for Ed. And that was It was challenging for me, given that I'm from DC. But so I relied heavily on digital organizing, which was kind of another pillar of the campaign, and put them together and ended up hosting this TikTokers for Ed phone bank, with like 10 of my TikTok friends. No one was that big. I didn't know a lot of people then. But it was really successful. We made about like 2,500 calls in like 45 minutes, which was one of the most successful VPB phone banks of the campaign. And so then when it came to the election, I kind of thought like, maybe there's something I can do for Biden. Maybe we can do a similar phone bank. Now I have more TikTok friends. So I kind of just organized that with a friend. And then we had this form that people would fill out to join. And I thought it was just gonna be 10 people, one phone bank. And then like 40 people signed up in the first few days. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Let's jump on Zoom with all of them and figure out exactly how this phone bank is going to work. So we jump on Zoom and everyone's like, wait, before we start, let me text my friend with like 2 million followers. Let me text my friend with 3 million followers. And so we just started growing and growing and growing from 40 to 80 to 200 to in the end about like 500 TikTok creators with a combined following of like, at that point, probably around 250 million, which has now grown to about like 430 million. And so at that point I was like, I should probably be thinking bigger than a phone bank. I got a course release from school and kind of put myself into TikTok for Biden full time. We started working with the Biden campaign. I was working all day. And it was an amazing experience. So that's how, and then after the election, we shifted to become Gen Z for Change, focusing on general social progress, not sometimes through politics, but not always. And since then we've worked with organizations like Fair Fight. We worked a lot on Georgia. We had a text bank. Our volunteers made over 250,000 texts. We worked with the International Refugee Assistance Project, Harvard, MTV, March On, the Future Coalition, the White House on this Fauci town hall, Made to Save, a bunch of really, really great organizations that were awesome to work with. And so my personal TikTok account is a little different. I post slightly different content on it. I started making TikToks in when a lot of people did in March of last year at the beginning of quarantine. And I made my username political Jew, which was definitely naive and shows that like when you're a white kid who grows up in like Northwest DC, then your perception of anti-Semitism is a little bit wrong. Um, and so in my mind, I was like, I'm political, I'm Jewish, I have a brand, that's that, which in the long term wasn't the best idea. But I started making TikToks about some about politics and some kind of from a comedic aspect, some combining the two. And I started getting followers, which I was really happy about. And I, in like late summer and late last summer, I started kind of leaning a little bit more into comedy because I mean, political TikTok was like one of the worst things in the world and everything about it was terrible. Like everyone just wanted to fight for no reason. And like, not to say like, not to be all like, no leftist infighting, we need to unite. Cause I think that's naive.
Did you find that it was more leftists attacking you or people from the right trying to challenge you?
Well, so from the right, I never really had any like issues with them. Like if Republicans want to comment like stuff on my post, like
I know that you were targeted by like right wing.
Yeah, but those were neo Nazis, so those were a little bit different, and so that was I'll talk about that in a second. But like so for like conservatives, I did get a lot of hate even before the doxing. Like I got death threats, I got stuff like that, which wasn't fun, but you just learn how to deal with it. But then from the left, there was a lot of criticism, which some of it was warranted. I look back on some of my videos and I'm like, that was a naive video to make. I would not make that video now. But so much of it was just like, I mean, basically every like guy on TikTok, who's on political TikTok, and a lot of people who aren't guys, but most guys who are on political TikTok have gotten canceled either for the way that they treat women or and that being up to like sexual assault. So it's not often it's not just like we just like saying messed up stuff is terrible, but like there is also some really like
there's a really bad culture. I just found out someone that I was going to interview, allegations came out and there's like there's a lack of accountability and this assertion of this weird sort of dominance that is found within male creators. And one thing I wanted to ask, like, how did you mentally handle that? How did you mentally handle the hate? Because like,
so I think for conservative criticism, it is just about like knowing, or at least telling yourself, like, this is not real. Like people are criticizing me, but this will probably not affect me in real life. If I don't look at this, then it's not there. That is, of course, not talking about like actual like serious death threats. And there's a lot that I still need to work out with my therapist, but like with Nazis and getting doxxed by Nazis consistently. But I think honestly, liberal criticism was harder to take than conservative, not liberal, leftist and liberal criticism. It was really just leftist. Leftist criticism was harder to take than conservative criticism, not including death threats. Because like there is an extent to which I agree with a lot of it. Like I am like in the world that we live in, I believe that gun control is good. It's hard to say good. I support gun control because I think it is like practical. And what's hard for me often is that like, it seems like the people leading conversations about how gun control is racist, like are white and ignore the fact that like gun control has much higher support in non-white communities, which is like, not to say that gun control cannot be racist, because it absolutely can. But what is challenging is that like, it's the same thing as earlier about Afghanistan, where there's no right solution, is that like gun control does have racist roots. And its use will be like, will of course have a racially tinted aspect because of the American criminal justice system and its flaws. But like, if we don't have gun control, it is going to be much worse for us in the long run.
It's a really hard time to have.
Yeah. So these are really hard conversations to have, especially like on TikTok, which now it's 3 minutes, but at that point it was 1 minute videos. And what was very challenging was that a lot of the people who were challenging me and saying like, no, there's no point in voting for Joe Biden, you shouldn't vote at all, like all these like very like extreme leftist things were often white men from positions of privilege, which
class reductionists.
Yes, which was challenging because again, you can read the statistics, like white people are a lot more likely to vote Green Party. Like, but that said, like, does Joe Biden have like a large number of flaws? Absolutely. Like, do we need to have a conversation about the American political system and how it upholds a system of white supremacy and capitalism?
And it leads to a conversation about the privilege it takes to not be pragmatic or to violence.
Yeah.
And it leads to a very slippery slope, because what I find is that people who don't believe in gun control, I've had conversations, I believe in pragmatic and nonviolent solutions to address most of our issues. What I find is that people and leftists who didn't believe in gun control wanted a revolution to come about, and people genuinely wanted this. Some people think democracy isn't the best form of government, and I just don't believe in that. And like, I find that leftist criticism sometimes is also more personal, and it's easy to wave away right-wing attacks because they're so far from what you believe. So I agree with. Also, I know you don't have a lot of time left, but do you believe in like the oval theory about how like if you go too far left and too far, yeah. I
don't, because I think that like
it finishes the threats of far right-wing violence.
And also I just like, I think is living in what has historically been like living, if you want to put life in the 1940s, if you want to put living in America, living in the USSR, probably specifically Russia, and living like in Nazi Germany, like, yeah, living in the USSR and the Soviet Union, like probably was more similar to living in Nazi Germany than it was to America. Because unlike some leftists, I think Stalin was bad. I think he was pretty bad on a lot.
And Mao too, while we're out.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think the horseshoe theory is true. I think there are aspects of living in a and I get
theory, by the way, not the oval.
I was like, that would have a different meaning. And again, this is in quotes because like there are a lot of people who don't consider Stalin a communist or a leftist, but living like in that era of the USSR was not dissimilar to living in like a far right regime. But I think with modern day applications, I think it's not really true.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I guess one last question. Do you have any advice to young people who get involved in politics? How do we respond to critics on the left who say that we're wasting our time, the institutions that we're trying to reform are inherently corrupt, and we're just contributing to class conflict and violence through capitalism? How do we stay motivated? I mean,
that's what goes through my mind constantly. I think what I've talked to a lot of like leftist activists about, and I wouldn't consider myself an activist, but when I've talked to leftist, like people who I would consider activists about, like there is and I'm sure you've experienced, and a lot of people listening have experienced this, where it's like this perpetual, we can use your oval. It's the perpetual oval where it's like, you start here and you're like, I want to make the world a better place. And I think politics are a way I can do that. So you get involved in politics, and you're like, oh, this system is really flawed. So like, what are my options now? And this is gonna, I should have gone here. We'll go here for this for the circle, where it's like, what are my options now? So you have two options. So you have like be involved in politics and just do the good that you can, or like give in to your side that's like everything that you can do is bad and will contribute to bad things in the long run. Everything is flawed. There's no solution. Leave America, leave Western civilization, leave all civilization, kind of just like lead a life on your own where you're not contributing to climate change or any of this stuff. But then you have the voice in your head that's like, that's so privileged because most people don't have the right to do that. And if you're leaving the system, then you are not doing anything. Like, so I guess the best thing that you can do is just like be involved and do what good that you can. So then you get around like to the beginning. So like it is this perpetual cycle that I think a lot of leftists go, or just people who recognize that capitalism is inherently and extremely flawed, like go through this cycle constantly. And I have been in moments where I'm like, everything I do is pointless. Like there is no point to any of this. Yes, I believe that I'm causing a positive, some sort of positive change, even if it's small, whatever it is, some sort of positive change. I believe it's happening, but it is not, no, it's nowhere near enough. But I'm like, this is all I can do. Like, this is all I can do. There's nothing else I can do. And there's no other option. So again, and this is going to be the bookend. All your options are terrible. Pick the least bad one, which I have decided is being involved in politics and doing what I can to make some positive change.
And thank you. You have made a lot of change. Everyone follow at Aidan. Please stop talking. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, which is the March on Voting Rights. And yeah, thank you. All right.